Welcome to the Mindful Return podcast. I'm Kelly Tuttle, a retired neurology nurse practitioner and brain injury survivor. Together, we'll explore practical tools and real stories to help you rebuild focus, confidence, and a meaningful life after a brain injury. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Mindful Return. I'm Kelly Tuttle, your host, and on this episode, we're going to talk about speech difficulties after a brain injury. So my story begins with a car accident, and I thought after the car accident, I could shake things off and just get back into life. And I went to work the next day, and when I went to work the next day, I worked with registered nurses and nurse practitioners that were very bright and in tuned to my behavior and my speech. And what they noticed was that I wasn't speaking right. And this happened when, after a meeting, we were going to take a break and walk over to a local Starbucks to get coffee. And I had walked up to a bunch of my colleagues that were talking after the meeting and asked, "Hey, do you want to go and get some Star Trek?" And they're like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, you want to get some Star Trek during our break?" And they're like, "You mean Starbucks?" And I was like, "Yeah, what did I say?" And they said, "You said Star Trek." And I'm like, "Oh no." And then they proceeded to tell me that I needed to see my general practitioner the next day. And I did as they said, and I was diagnosed with a concussion. And so that was kind of my first intro to having difficulty talking, expressing myself after a brain injury. And things kind of got worse going forward until I was seen by a physical medicine and rehab doctor and was referred to speech therapy, which of course helped tremendously. Difficulty with verbal communication is a common brain injury symptom, and this is different than when people seem to scramble with their words or struggle to remember a word or a name. This type of difficulty with speech after a brain injury is something that inflicts the individual every day, pretty much with every conversation. And for people with healthy brains, it's more of an infrequent and occasional event. It's something that plagues the confidence of brain injury survivors when communicating around others. And this becomes a really big issue when you're in the workplace, because the biggest fear of a brain injury survivor is that they'll lose their job or be seen as incompetent or not credible. And if witnesses see their difficulty with communication, then that could be an issue of them maintaining their position. And this is a real concern. People have lost their jobs after brain injuries because of their difficulty with communication and speaking. The other thing that can happen after a brain injury is you can have difficulty with writing. So making typos in emails and so forth. And this can also cause anxiety in a brain injury survivor whose job depends on them being able to write clear communications. So some of the common communication symptoms following a brain injury are difficulty with finding a word, difficulty with pronouncing words, thinking of one word and having another word come out, feeling like your speech is slow, running words together. So you'll say two words, but you'll run them together to form one word. Saying or writing similar sounding words instead of what you intentionally want to say or write. For example, saying injury versus energy. If you listen to my podcast, sometimes you'll see me flip those. The other one is systems versus symptoms. And again, I've made this twist of the tongue air on my podcast too. So anyone who has followed me in my videos and podcasts might have heard my brain switch those two terms. I try to catch them when I'm doing my editing, but sometimes they're just going to be there. And you guys can go ahead and just enjoy those bloopers. Another symptom of communication difficulties after a brain injury is the inability to say words correctly or clearly. So, occasionally have slurring of your words, or there's a word that you used in the past and are unable to say anymore. You'll also struggle with typos or spelling errors in written communication. You may have difficulty with handwriting and typing, and you may lose your ability to spell familiar words. Other brain injury survivors have had loss of previous vocabulary and can't remember words they used to know. It's important to remember that everyone, including those with healthy brains, can make mistakes. We all have moments when we lose our train of thought or struggle to find the right word. It's completely normal to send emails that contain typos or misspellings from time to time. These experiences are shared part of just being human, and embracing our imperfections is okay. Say, for example, that you're like me and you do not want to disclose your brain injury to your employer or coworkers. In that case, if you do struggle with your words or type a typo in an email and someone points it out to you, just try to navigate the issue with deflecting with humor and saying things like, oh boy, I could really use another cup of coffee when you're in these interactions. So don't panic. Just laugh at your tongue-tied situation and walk away. And if it's a typo, just try to mindfully remember that you made that mistake or that error and just try not to make it again. And one of the things you can do is, like with words that you're having difficulty spelling that you use a lot throughout the day, is just to keep a list of them in a pad or notebook that you can reference quickly to look at that word and spell it correctly. Or, of course, using a digital dictionary or a thesaurus is helpful too. But if you're trying to be sly and you work for someone that disapproves of use of personal phones, then you may want to do the piece of paper or notebook thing. So when we communicate, it's really incredible all the brain processes that are involved with communication and language. And just kind of the basics with communication and language. First of all, you have to be able to hear and understand someone clearly. And then you have to your brain has to take those sounds and create words to them. And then you have to comprehend those words. And then you need to formulate a plan of how you're going to respond. And when you respond, then your brain has to coordinate your voice, your tongue, the way your mouth moves to articulate those words clearly. It's a lot that's involved, and any of those processes can be knocked offline after a brain injury and can impact the way you speak. One of the other things that's real important when you're speaking is that your brain needs to be able to sort information and knowledge that comes in and then put it in a place where it can retrieve it later. And this involves, memory. And as we know, some brain injury survivors will have glitchy memories that don't work as well. And so that sort and retrieval can be impacted, and then that's going to impact your speech and your word finding. The other thing that impacts brain injury survivors is the ability to concentrate. And you need to be able to concentrate to hear what is being said and to focus on the thoughts happening inside your mind, and then to retrieve the information that you need. So concentration's really another key component that is a part of the language and speech processes that's going on in your brain. The other reason why people may struggle with speech after a brain injury is that these processes that I just talked about take brain energy to run. And after a brain injury, you are running on an energy deficit. And like I've said in previous episodes, is after a brain injury, you have cells that die, and those cells had mitochondria in it. Some cells may be injured, and then the mitochondria, the organelle that makes energy for your brain to run on, are damaged or lost. So just that basic layer of the injury is going to set you up for lack of energy to power these higher cognitive executive processes. And that's why you'll struggle to speak. And things that will worsen your difficulty with speech will be, of course, fatigue, like a poor night of sleep, stress, anxiety, headaches, low glucose from maybe a missed meal, because glucose the brain needs to make energy. The other thing is distractions, like distractions in the environment, people walking around, noises, other conversations that are happening on the side are going to make it difficult for your brain to focus on the conversation you're engaged in, hear it, understand it, comprehend, and respond. So if there's any distractions, like a TV's on, music, like I said, conversations, maybe you could be at a restaurant and the blender at the bar goes off. All of these things can distract you and make it difficult for you to communicate with people in those distracting environments. And then the other thing is attempting to multitask while you're speaking. And multitasking is the ability to shift focus from one thing to another quickly. And after a brain injury, that process is slowed down or made even impossible. And I know for me, 10 years out, I still can't talk and do something at the same time like I used to be able to do. Like before my brain injury, I could talk to my patients and then type a little bit into their note, into the computer note. But after my brain injury, forget it. I could not type and talk at the same time, or even work on putting in an order for the patient and listen to their conversation. And I would just have to tell them, hey, I cannot talk and type at the same time. And most people are very understanding about that. And so that they didn't feel like I wasn't listening to them or something. And I would finish up what I was going to put in the computer. Maybe it was a note on their after visit summary to remind them of what we had talked about. And then I would resume my conversation with the patient or the caregiver, and we would have a good chuckle, knowing that not a lot of people really can do that type of multitasking. What they didn't realize, though, was I used to be able to do it a little bit, and after my brain injury, I couldn't do it. So I got really good at just listening to the conversation of the patient, making minimal notes in handwriting, and then anything important such as writing prescriptions, and then my history and physical findings, I would later go back to my desk, and then I'd be able to focus on that type of charting. So yeah, being able to speak and multitask at the same time may be an issue. Early in my recovery, in my family, my kids knew, don't talk to mom when she's trying to cook, because she can't do both. And so that's gotten a little bit better, but it's not 100%. Now, there are some things that you can try to help strengthen your language skills, and you might hear these things also from your speech therapist. So one of them is practice handwriting. Handwriting helps connect the hand, the body, and the brain together. And that's really important because that connection can be interfered with after a brain injury. So every time you're handwriting or writing down a thought, you're really using all those brain processes that you need to have clear communication with others. So practicing handwriting every day. And one of the ways you can do that is just practicing writing letters, not letters to people, but letters in the alphabet. Or you can, what I recommend is journal journaling every day, journal in the morning, journal at night. This helps the brain kind of reconnect with your movements, your thoughts, the process that are involved with communication. And with handwriting, you are doing what's called language formulation. And language formulation is thinking of words to express your thoughts. So if you have your journal, one of the things you can practice is writing down a few words and then taking those few words like blue, ball, dog, and then creating a sentence with that. The dog loved to play with the blue ball, and that will help you with your language formulation processes in your brain. And if you're looking for a great journal for brain injury survivors, check out my journal, which is available on Amazon. You can find it by typing in my name, Kelly Tuttle, or the title of the journal is My Brain Injury Recovery Journal. And there you will find a great journal where you can practice your handwriting, write your thoughts, and then there's checkoffs on it about if you think today is going to be a good brain day, a bad brain day, how many hours did you sleep? There's some prompts in it to help you stay in touch and aware of all the lifestyle things that you want to integrate into your recovery. The other thing you could do to strengthen your language is to play crossword puzzles. And you can get these books either online or at a drugstore like CVS or something. And if you're not really good at crosswords, which I am not at all, they actually have crossword puzzles that are easy. So you could start off with super easy books of crossword puzzles and make sure they have the answers in the back and work on that. And as you improve, then you'd want to get more challenging crossword puzzle books. And so that's a great way to strengthen your language. And again, your handwriting, you're writing in that crossword in letters in those boxes. It's great for eye-hand coordination and again, reconnecting the body with the brain and engaging all of those brain processes that are related to language and writing and thinking and processing thoughts. The other fun thing you can do, which I'm a total in favor of because I love word search puzzles. I even liked them before my brain injury, but I still love them. And so looking for words helps improve your language skills for your brain. So word search puzzles are also great. You can also practice vocabulary drills. So what this involves is that you select a word, you think of a word, and then you think of a synonym to that word and an antonym to that word. And then also write down the definition. And this will help kind of reconnect those lost words and cement them better back into your memory. Another practice is speaking out loud. So just speaking out loud when you're alone, when you want to practice your speech. One of the things is you could talk to yourself as you're getting ready. Like, now I'm going to put on my shirt. My shirt is blue. I love this shirt. It's nice and cozy. Now I'm going to put on my pants, and you're talking out loud. And that is a way to strengthen your language skills. You can also read out loud to yourself when you're reading a book. Singing to songs that you're familiar with, that you know the words to, singing to them over and over and over again. And then see if you can get through the song without missing a word or speaking a word. And then attending support groups with brain injury survivors allows you to speak and communicate freely without feeling like you're being judged. So that's another good place to practice your speech. One strategy would be to slow the pace in conversation responses. This allows your brain time to work through the processes it needs to do to help you speak. So slowing down the pace and how you respond in a conversation will be helpful. Unfortunately, if you don't respond quickly, sometimes people will continue talking and then you might forget what you were going to say. And that's frustrating and it can feel very isolating. But don't worry, things will eventually get better over time. And just learn to listen more and stay in the conversation and participate whenever you can. And if it's in a conversation where it's a close friend or a trusted family member, speak up and say, hey, I wasn't done talking, or I do talk slow, so let me finish what I was going to say. Or you could say, just remembered what I was going to say, things like that. So, but slowing down your speech and your pace will definitely help out saying the words that you want and saying clearly. Another strategy is to write down the words you have a hard time saying. Sometimes seeing the word may help you say it more clearly. And this is definitely a tactic I used when I was working. I would go to talk to somebody, and if there was a word I needed to say that I was struggling with having to say, I would write that word down. And then when it was time to say that word, it could have been like a medical terminology, and then I could glance down. And for some reason, it really helped my brain process the word and then allowed me to speak it clearly. The other thing is you should practice what you're going to say or what you want to say before you speak to the person. And that it will help get those brain processes going too. So if you have something you need to say to someone, practice it in private. And then when you go and talk to that person, hopefully it'll come out more smoothly. I talked a little bit about this before, limit distractions. So try to speak to people in quiet spaces. And if you're at home and you want to have a conversation with a family member, make sure the TV volume is muted or the TV is off. And same thing with music or any other distractions in the environment. Some brain injury survivors feel that their writing skills are better than their speaking skills. So sending emails or team messages or texts rather than doing face-to-face or a telephone call can be helpful. So a lot of times when people would ask me questions at work, I would say, let me get back to you. And that would allow me to look up whatever it was that I needed to. Maybe it wasn't sitting right there in my memory. And then also to better communicate what I wanted to say in a written message rather than verbally or over the phone. If you're in a conversation and you can't remember like the name of an object, then start to describe the object. And that will sometimes prompt your brain to pull up that word. And that's another strategy that you can take. Like, for example, can you give me that round thing that's orange? And then that'll sometimes trigger you to remember, can you hand me that orange? So something like that. Another helpful strategy is to visualize the word and see how it's spelled. And sometimes if you write the word down, that'll help you find the word or say the word. The other thing too is if you struggle with emotional outbursts when speaking to other people, or you can feel you're, getting upset or anxious when you're talking to someone, you want to minimize those type of interactions. So don't engage in any friendly debates with, your coworkers or managers. That might trigger your emotional response and then get you to say things that you don't want to say. Don't argue if a coworker doesn't get it, what you're trying to explain, or if they're pointing out an error or a mistake. Just listen to what they're saying, and if they have a different point of view than you, then just listen to their point of view. Don't try to get your point of view through, because it's just not a safe space for you to be in after a brain injury, to try to argue or communicate your point across without probably saying things that you shouldn't say. So always just revert back to, if you're starting to feel defensive or upset or anxious, to zip it. don't say anything at all and listen to what they have to say, and then thank them for sharing the information with you, and then walk away. The other strategy you can use when having difficult conversations, especially with managers, is just to listen to what they are saying. You normally don't have to respond, or you can say, let me get back to you about that. And then, or you can say, okay, thank you. Or you can say, are you done? Thank you. And walk away. And that way you don't have to engage at that moment in a heated conversation, and therefore maintain your credibility and respect with the colleagues at work. And then another strategy is using, like I said before, a digital dictionary or a thesaurus when you're looking for words or trying to remember how to spell them when you're say if you're typing up a email, those type of external devices are really helpful. And then the last strategy is just trying to use humor to deflect the attention off of maybe a word that you said that was switched with another word, or was a new word you made by combining a couple words together, and just say, like I said before, oh man, I need another cup of coffee, or I just had a brain glitch, and laugh it off and then walk away. That's sometimes one of the best things you can do when you're struggling with your speech. So if you're having difficulty with speech and communication, see your general practitioner and get a referral to a speech therapist. Request your doctor to order a neuropsychological assessment. This test can pinpoint your language or speech issues and help with developing a treatment plan and therapy for you. A psychotherapist can help you cope with speech frustrations and feelings of being misunderstood by family, friends, and coworkers. So that's a good person to talk to also. And then consider family counseling, because a family counselor can help point out that your speech difficulty and communications difficulty is related to your brain injury, so that your family can be more understanding and aware of your struggles and the strategies you need to be able to communicate clearly. So a family counselor can definitely help you with that. And then I want to leave you with this. Remember that you are still intelligent. It's just that your brain is healing. And over time, you and your brain will create new pathways and strategies to improve your communication and your brain's performance. In the meantime, try to laugh at yourself and your brain. Take care, get better, get stronger. You've been listening to the Mindful Return podcast with me, Kelly Tuttle. Subscribe wherever you listen and head to kellytuttle.org for brain injury recovery tools, free resources, and inspiration to help you return to work with confidence and hope.